Welcome to Impact Pasadena, and I'm delighted to welcome today my guest, the Vice Mayor of Pasadena, John Kennedy. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, Hoyt. Glad to be here.
So John Kennedy has a really distinguished career in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. He's traveled extensively and he's worked in philanthropy, in real estate, in business development, and in the public sector. One of his great accomplishments, I thought, was at such a young age, 25, he was the president of the Pasadena branch of the NAACP at the young age of 25. He's educated at USC, has a law degree from Howard University. He's worked in a lot of different departments in Pasadena, City Attorney's Department, Finance, Police, and Public Works. He's really been a terrific leader in our community. He's been on the City Council for 5 years, and he's Vice Mayor as of this year. So I'm again welcoming John Kennedy to our program. John actually was born and raised in Pasadena, went to Blair High School. I think you were student body president there, John, is that correct?
That is correct.
So I know you and your family have great roots in Pasadena. Could you talk a little bit about that and what Pasadena means to you growing up here?
Would be happy to do that. I have 7 sisters and 2 brothers, my mother and father, and my siblings. We were reared on Hammond Street between Lincoln and Forest here in Pasadena. My mother hails from Starkville, Mississippi, where the Bulldogs, Mississippi State's located. And my father hails from Newberry, South Carolina. So we have deep Southern roots and very proud of that. Pasadena is just an extraordinary place to be. It's very diverse, and I'm happy to be a part of this community.
Well, one of the things that what you do representing Pasadena is some extensive travel. I see you've gone to very far-flung places, and you mentioned to me that you're just back from Senegal.
Yes.
What was the purpose of the trip there?
Before we get to that purpose, the reason I've traveled so extensively is because at the age of 17, I was selected on the People to People Student Ambassador Program. This program was really inaugurated by Dwight Eisenhower in 1956 and extended to high school students in 65. So at the age of 17, I went to Austria, Germany, Italy, Hungary, Yugoslavia, and Greece, and stayed with families in Germany, wow, Austria, and Greece. And for the most part, I've kept in touch with them over this almost 40 years now, maybe a little bit more than 40 years. And so my recent trip to Dakar, Senegal was part of the Sister Cities organization, which also was started by Dwight Eisenhower in 1956. Sister Cities and the People to People program were really sister organizations under the same umbrella, if you will. And so there's a subcommittee of the Sister Cities program called the Africa Subcommittee, and that's headed by Boualem Bousselou from Algeria originally, but a longtime Pasadena resident. And so he went to Dakar, Senegal on a fact-finding mission to hopefully establish a sister city, our first sister city, with a city in Africa. Many people view Africa as a country, but Africa obviously is a continent. And Dakar has special meaning for African Americans because it was a de-embarkation in one sense, and an embarkation, another sense, where between 15 and 20 million Africans lost their life in the transatlantic slave trade.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's I always believe that travel enriches people, and it certainly enriched your life, I can see.
I believe so.
Yeah. The other thing is, just as we're talking about African American history, I noticed that you had gifted a portrait to the city of Pasadena honoring Barack Obama and also the great African Americans who've contributed so much to our society and our country.
Well, I think it was befitting that I do something like that. I was on the National Finance Committee for President Obama, his first term, second term, and we have been really fortunate to be a part of that presidency at a distance. My sister is even more involved because she was a vice chair of the Democratic Party for Finance and also is a Barack Obama appointee to the Kennedy Center board in Washington, D.C. But it's just been an honor to have that association. But specifically about the painting, that painting was done by artists in Cannes, France, His family from Cameroon, even though he was born in France. His name is Pascal Impec. And so I acquired the painting. I had hoped originally it would hang in the White House, but our main library is a wonderful venue for young people to see this particular president, I believe the 44th president of the United States. And so this hangs here, but it doesn't hang just for people to witness here. It's also a welcoming beacon to the President of the United States to let him know that we miss him. This was his home for a short period of time.
Miss him, I gotta say.
We miss him on several levels, but this was his home for 2 years on Glenarm. There's a plaque where he actually lived, and now we have this extraordinary painting that links Africa to the U.S. through Middle America to great leaders of the past, and culminating in some sense with the election of Barack Obama as president of the United States. So it was an honor to present this painting to.
And obviously his election was a turning point in our country and the world. And on Glenarm there is a plaque. If you go just east of Arroyo on Glenarm, you'll see the plaque on the sidewalk where Barack Obama lived as a student when he was at Occidental College.
Yes.
So it's a little bit of history that we got in Pasadena.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you grew up in Pasadena and you chose to go to SC instead of UCLA or Harvard or someplace like that.
Well, I was actually admitted at UCLA as well and other very fine institutions, but USC is special in that it has this great alumni association then and still does now, and I wanted to really patch into that. At the time, I thought USC would be a more intimate school in some respect. I was a student senator there, and I chose USC over UCLA, even though the eldest sister or the oldest child went to UCLA and enjoyed that experience.
We have all these inter-family rivalries between SC and UCLA and Pasadena, as you know.
Absolutely.
Well, so then you went back east to Howard for your law degree. How did you decide to go to law school and go back east?
Well, normally, as an elected, you wouldn't be as candid as I'm going to be, but the reality is that I was waitlisted at Georgetown, and I really assumed that if you are admitted into their evening program, which I was admitted into their evening program, which was a 4-year program, that you could not transfer to the day program. I wanted to get through law school in 3 years and get it over with. A hindsight or more knowledge, and this is something that I want young people to really understand, ask as many questions as possible before you make life-changing decisions. I'm happy that I went to Howard, actually, but Georgetown was a much better known, if you will, school, but I'm happy that I went to Howard because of its historic importance to this country.
Yeah, it's a terrific institution, Howard, very influential. So did you come back to California after law school? Or
Immediately after law school, even though I had clerked for the second largest law firm in the country, Finley Cumble, that in fact eventually crumbled, I came back to Pasadena and ran for the presidency of the Pasadena chapter of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and I lost the first election. The organization was run by a very senior group of people, and I just thought it needed some new blood, and I was part of that new blood. But anyway, the more sophisticated folks who were running the organization essentially stole the election from me. At least that was my claim. So I flew to New York, and the National Board of Directors of the NAACP overturned the election and ordered a new election. I won by a small number of votes.
That's great. They always say in politics that you need to lose your first election and it sounds like you didn't even lose. You had a half.
I won't say it was a loss, but it certainly was a learning experience. You have to stick through and be committed if you're going to take that step in politics or elected office. You got to just you got to stick with it and not give up. If your principles are that strong to you, then fight for them. So
then you were in Virginia for a while. You're working there.
when I was here in the city of Pasadena, I worked for the city of Pasadena in several capacities, several departments, including the city attorney's office. And Nick Rodriguez, who is now the assistant city manager, was my boss, essentially, and Mary Bradley. And so I worked for the police department as well, and the police chief at that time was a guy by the name of Jerry Oliver. Before he left Pasadena, I started the Pasadena Police Foundation, was instrumental in helping with the Citizens Police Academy and other initiatives with some of the more senior people who are currently still on the Pasadena Police Department. But he said, as he was leaving to become chief of police in Richmond, Virginia, would you consider working in a southern town? And I didn't know what he meant at the time, but subsequently I was contacted by the search firm out of Denver, Colorado. There were 79 applicants, former police chiefs, FBI agents, DEA agents, a whole host of very high-powered individuals. And of that group, I came out, I think, in the top 9 and then top candidate to be one of the 3 deputy chiefs, one for investigative, one for essentially field services. That's the larger part of the organization, administration. I've never been a sworn police officer, but I handled, as a deputy police chief for administration, hiring and firing, property and evidence, planning, budget, finance, and of course we had a world-class training academy, which was under my auspices as a deputy police chief.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was so impressed by your resume, because I've known you for a while, but I didn't realize the breadth of your experience. You know, it's unusual to see somebody who's got experience in finance and in policing, in public service, nonprofits, and private sector. So I'm sure that brings to bear a lot in your work on the city council.
It does, and I had contemplated running for public office probably 25 years before I actually ran for public office. But my brother, Michael, who had worked for the city of Pasadena for about 40 years, who succumbed to cancer, he said to me, you need to run, and you need to run now. And then there were some confirmatory, magical things that happened that gave me an impetus to say maybe I should, in fact, run. Maybe the timing was right. Even though I didn't enjoy the support of my predecessor, Chris Holden, when I ran, I did fairly well in the race, and I view him as a supporter since, in fact, I was his finance chair when he first was elected to the city council. So.
Okay. Well, you know, I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about some of the issues that are facing Pasadena currently.
Everything in Pasadena is fantastic. There are no major issues that we are facing, and I'm not sure why you want to talk about those types of things.
Well, I just have you here, so I thought we might talk about something.
Okay.
I agree with you. It's actually a great place to live. But we have challenges, and I know you're aware of them, and I'd love to talk to you about them a little bit. And I want to get, rather than getting too much in the weeds, you know, for our audience, I'd really like to get an overview of some of the challenges that you see in some of the different areas that we're facing. Maybe top of the list this year is some of the finances that the city faces. I know that the mayor has talked in his State of the Union of the city, about the shortfalls that we're looking at in the future and how to address that, cutting obviously some of the fat that may still exist, but really never cutting into the bone of what city services are important. So if you could just give us a little overview of city finances and how you see what those challenges are and how you see some of the solutions that have been proposed.
Well, I paid close attention to the finances of the city from day one of my decision to run for city council. It's been a topic that's not new to me. I knew that our finances were under stress, and it's just proven in terms of serving on the finance committee along with the mayor as the chair of that committee. So revenue has been flat basically for quite some time now in the city of Pasadena. And during the recession in the fall of housing prices in around 2008, it had a disproportionately negative impact on the city of Pasadena. So the city went through cutting in terms of full-time equivalent employees, if you will. And we can only do so much cutting and deliver the quality services that the city of Pasadena expects, the residents of the city of Pasadena, the business owners, and those who come here to play and just enjoy all of the wonderful aspects that make Pasadena a great city. So I had been advocating literally from day one that we needed to look at this whole issue in a comprehensive way. I did that in Steve Mermel, who is the city manager, but his predecessor, Michael Beck, I said the same thing to him, that we've got to look at finances. We cannot kick the can down the road. And so this mayor has heard that from me and has made some independent decisions unrelated to my demands, and has brought forth with staff's assistance a measure to address shortfalls in our budget, because it shows in 2019 will be deficit spending, if you will. And that's something that I have said to our current city manager is a non-starter. We're not going to be in the red in this city, not because we're above it, because our residents and the voters expect us to stay in the black. And so what we have as an opportunity to strengthen our finances is a marginal increase in our sales tax, basically, to address public safety issues, to address public works issues, to address capital improvement issues for the city that are basically all, if you look at empirical data, underfunded.
Mm-hmm. So the proposal, as I understand it, is to put on the ballot in November, and I believe it will be on the ballot, a sales tax increase of 0.075%, which is 3/4 of a penny, if I'm understanding right, on the dollar. I just wondered if, first of all, am I correct about that and the procedure, and also do you support this?
I wasn't very good in math, even though I had finance and budget and have a good understanding of how to put nickels and dimes together, but I think that's fairly correct.
Mm-hmm. And do you support the proposal? Will you support the ballot initiative?
Absolutely.
Great. And as far as you've looked at, this will address the shortfall that we're looking at for the immediate future?
My view is that the city has to do another internal assessment of critical services, and if there is any other cuts that we can make that do not reach the bone, mm-hmm. and still deliver world-class services that are expected, then we have to do that. We have to do that in conjunction with asking the voters for their assistance.
So just as a footnote on this, I know that the pension obligations for the city that have been imposed by CalPERS and STRS and the state, nothing you can do about that, but that does eat up a fair chunk of the city's funds. Am I correct about that? Is that part of what's going on?
Retirement costs are looming, and the nut to crack over time is going to be about $300 million plus of unfunded pension obligations. But even before we get to that, we had low and moderate income housing trust funds in the city of Pasadena, mm-hmm. to deal with the draconian decisions, public policy decisions of former city councils of how they decimated the African American community, both residential and business-wise, along Fair Oaks and all the way to the northwest section of Pasadena. To address that issue, we would take tax increment money to fund the building of very low and moderate income housing. Well, a previous mayor of the city of Pasadena by the name of John Crowley worked with O'Melveny and Myers, a preeminent law firm in Los Angeles, to develop a solution with the assistance of State Senator Newt Russell. And that solution, dealing with the old fire and police retirement system, was to offer SB 481, and it passed by the voters. And it took the monies that were supposed to go to building housing and dealing with the quote unquote urban renewal, which was a code word for Negro removal. It took those funds, about $200 million over a 20-year period, to shore up the old fire and police pension fund. Well, almost all of that $200 million, this is an exaggeration, but a significant amount of that corpus was wiped out because of poor decision making related to that board that oversaw the fire and police pension fund.
Okay.
That's the old system. That is not PERS. So over the years, the city of Pasadena, the voters have had to float bonds to shore up that system. So that's one pension fund different from PERS that the residents, the voters, those who pay taxes have had to deal with through various bond measures. So that was poor decision making then. That decision making has gotten it, we're paying for it. But that decision making has gotten better as it relates to the old fire and police pension fund. Now, as it relates to PERS, PERS is an interesting animal for us now too, because it mandates increases in pension obligations, and we've got to figure out a way to pay for it.
Yeah, I should, just for the benefit of our viewers, I should explain that PERS and STRS are state pension funds that are funded by employees and for their pensions when they retire. And there's a shortfall in the pension fund, at least a projected shortfall that the state's trying to make up for.
So all cities in California are dealing with the same issue. And that is, how do we fund these unfunded pension obligations? And so the city of Pasadena isn't alone, but the city council is providing leadership, and some would debate that, but leadership to deal with this issue because we have to.
Let me, now that since you bring up housing, I know housing's a hot topic in Pasadena on a number of different levels. And one is that the high cost of housing that's pushing low-income and young people out of the city. Can't afford to live here even if you work here. Another issue, and I'm going to throw a lot at you, but we'll
okay.
Parse it a little bit. The other issue is homelessness, which is related to the first issue, which is the cost of housing, and then finally the issue of development. And in many ways, as you know, and most residents of Pasadena know, we're almost a tale of two cities in the sense we have very affluent areas, but then we also have areas that are low income, and there's sometimes the trend towards development pushes people out who've lived here a long time because they can't afford to live here, and gentrification and some of those other issues. So I know you'll want to pick that apart, but if you could, we'd love to hear a little bit more about it.
Well, historically, realtors in the city of Pasadena would not direct white people to Northwest Pasadena to purchase. There was a gentleman that played Santa Claus who happened to be white. Last name was Joyce. First name was Tom. Every Christmas time, he would play Santa Claus. And what he said to me is, as those white realtors were telling their clients not to come to Northwest Pasadena, that's how he became a multimillionaire, because he would not adopt those racist myopic views about Northwest Pasadena. And so I ascribe to the view that people live where they can afford to live. But having said that, Northwest Pasadena is the hottest place in the city of Pasadena, obviously, because some believe, who were there for generations, that they're being pushed out. The reality is that as our parents and grandparents die off, they're generally siblings that have to make the decision, do I keep the home or do I sell the home so I can satisfy the heirs? And oftentimes the decision is made to sell the property, and then that leaves an opening for whoever can afford, obviously, to purchase that home. And what young couples, irrespective of race, but significantly other than African American, have noted that the architectural style that exists in Northwest Pasadena is second to none. The Craftsman, the Queen Anne, and even the ranch style homes in Northwest Pasadena are phenomenal. They may not be as large as the homes that exist near California Institute of Technology or in Linda Vista or San Rafael, but certainly the housing stock there is beautiful. And so people are coming to a beautiful neighborhood, and they're demanding services, and they're renovating homes, and they're being a part of the community. So in terms of gentrification, I don't look at it as pure gentrification. I look at it as people are moving where they can afford to live. And still there are affordable pockets in Northwest Pasadena, but even in Northwest Pasadena, that's changing, where I suspect the median price for a home in Northwest Pasadena is upwards of $620,000.
Well,
and then going north.
I wholly agree with you on having. I served on the Northwest Commission, so I'm really aware of all the opportunities and the beauty of Northwest. I'm going to wrap it up now for this segment, but if you will agree to stay and talk to us a little bit more, because we've just barely scratched the surface in terms of your views and some of the issues that are facing Pasadena. So let me thank you for being here, and I'll look forward to the next segment when we'll be able to explore all these issues further. Thank you,
Delighted.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you.
This program was produced by Pasadena Media for the Arroyo Channel.